the hype about the left also has to do with fear of this right-wing extremism, which is in power in the United States and which is also getting stronger in Germany. And what Zoran Mamdani did, he did focus on the bread and butter themes, high rents and the buses and childcare. So it's a reaction. People look for hope, for alternatives.
We need an alternative to the alternative.
Exactly. Very much also a part of a reaction to the rise of the right, yes.
I'm here with Daniel Bax, the journalist and author who's written a new book, The Neue Lust auf Links, the new hype on the left. We're talking just a couple of days after Zoran Mamdani won the New York mayoral election, a major upset, which has kind of given the global left a new figurehead, a new energy perhaps, as well as the rise of Die Linke here in Germany, who have, gone from strength to strength. So Daniel, why do you think the left seems to actually be... We've heard a lot about the far right, the rise of the far right in recent years. Why do you think the left seems to be clawing back some attention? Is that what's happening?
It's definitely a reaction to the rise of the right, and the hype about the left also has to do with fear of this right-wing extremism, which is in power in the United States and which is also getting stronger in Germany. So it's a reaction, and people look for hope, for alternatives to, like the alternative for Germany, the right-wing party in Germany.
We need an alternative to the alternative.
Exactly.
Saying, yeah.
So it's very much also a part of a reaction to the rise of the right, yes.
And I wonder as well, do you think it's also both of them are coming from a similar dissatisfaction with the centre and with the, centre-right, centre-left, which has caused a lot of problems? People are dissatisfied. Living standards have gone down, right? So, in your book, you've talked about how Die Linke went from kind of out of nowhere, practically written off about a year ago, which was when we last talked about the left on this podcast. I think Ines and Jan, the leaders, were just fresh in office, and we had Lauren Balhorn here from Jacobin, and actually, back then we thought maybe Sahra Wagenknecht is the great hope of the left, but that's not how it turned out, is it?
No, au contraire, I would say. The interesting thing is Zoran Mamdani, in his speech after he won the election, he said, he addressed Trump and he said, well, you were voted by workers and by others because people were dissatisfied, but you didn't keep your promises. The costs of living have gone up, and you're you're a traitor to the working class. That's what he actually basically said in his words. And but you were elected because of people being dissatisfied. It's true. I mean, many workers voted for Donald Trump, even though he didn't have a social agenda to speak of. So the way to counter this dissatisfaction, which the right caters to, the left has to bring different concepts, different vision. I mean, the right says it's all migrants and woke left and so on. And what Zoran Mamdani did, he did focus on the bread and butter themes, kitchen table topics, high rents and the buses and childcare. I mean, New York is the most expensive city in the United States, as much as I know of. So these are topics which kind of unite many people. And there is a parallel to what the left did. I mean, they also they did their whole campaign on the rent.
Yeah.
Mietendeckel is exactly the same what Zoran Mamdani said.
Yeah.
Zoran Mamdani said, I don't think there should be billionaires. Exactly the same thing what Jan van Aken said.
Yeah, he always wears the T-shirts, tax the rich and stuff.
So there are lots of parallels, not only the strategy and the slogans, also the Haustürwahlkampf. They went to canvassing. I mean, that's an American thing.
True.
Which the left kind of adopted for Germany and was very successful in doing that.
Especially in Neukölln, right?
Going from door to door. Also in Neukölln, a part of Berlin, they had a very charismatic front figure. That led to a kind of hype in parts of Germany for the left just almost a year ago. And now for Zoran Mamdani, the playbook is actually there are quite a few parallels.
True, but I think there is one big difference, right? And that would be, in my view, Gaza, Palestine, because Mamdani was always at the forefront of pro-Palestine protests. A good friend of mine who was once in the Jüdische Antifa in Berlin was actually arrested with him about a year ago, I think, before he was a huge figure like he is now. He was almost a global figure as the mayor of New York. And this is something which the Left Party has been really kind of dragging its feet on. In one sense, they are the most they're the most in solidarity with Palestine out of any party in Germany. But they've had to be dragged there. And they are still quite divided on this issue. Why do you think that is? Why did it take them so long to get to where they are? What stops them from also going the Mamdani route of, full embrace of the Palestinian cause? Because I think this, if I read somewhere that there was 38% of voters said that Palestine played a role, or Israel played a role in their vote, in a New York mayoral election, which actually has very little to do with the conflict in a certain sense, whereas Germany, which is one of Israel's key suppliers of weapons, this was not a topic in the election. And do you think it actually quite clever to stay away from it?
Well, we are in Germany, so the discourse is different here, and it's very, very limited also. And you can easily get accused by big media, Bild-Zeitung, and by many groups to be anti-Semitic if you too much engage in solidarity with Palestine. So, and it also splits part of the party. There is a part of the party which is pro-Israeli, out of this kind of sense, out of German responsibility for the Holocaust, we have to stand with Israel. It's a very short cut way of thinking, but it's widespread in Germany. It's kind of Staatsräson.
Yeah.
And part of the left party are also cling to that. So this is one reason. But I also have to say, compared to other parties in Europe, even the Prime Minister of Spain or in Ireland, the discourse is very different. So even centrist parties or social democratic parties are maybe partly more radical than the left party is here.
Yes.
On the one side. On the other side, still, as you said, even though they focus on social issues, like Mamdani did actually.
Like he did, it's true.
Of course, it played a role for their success. So many people who were dissatisfied with the Green Party, with the Social Democratic Party being in power and still not saying anything about the genocide, even supplying weapons to Israel. There were some discussions, but nothing really happened, and nothing we know of. So there was no big discussion in Germany. So the left was the only party who kind of had a different position. And they did. They have been voted by many young people who were hoping for a different stance. And they are against weapon deliveries anywhere. And
true.
They are for Palestine being accepted as a sovereign nation.
Recognized as a state. Yeah.
Exactly. They had this position. It was known of, and that's what they have been voted for by many young people. They have been voted for by many young people anyway. So
they were the only force which was really against the AfD and the CDU as well.
Exactly. Because the Green Party also, they were kind of blinking with one eye to the CDU. We don't like your racism, but
we want to be in government so we can change stuff.
Exactly. Just in case we would be there to form a coalition with you. So that many young people, they didn't like that, so they voted for the left party. Also because of their stance on Gaza, even it was not on the front line.
Yeah, it was the least worst option.
Exactly, and they organized a big demonstration in Berlin. 100,000 people came here. And they've been vocal about it in the Bundestag.
Yeah.
So
some members more than others.
Members more than others. But I think, the party, and that's a big success. I find they're still in fights, and there are still, which is very problematic. They're still these fights they open in the open. They it's not nothing behind closed doors. It's just they fight in the open. They're still there, but it's much better than in the past, where there was a really toxic conflict in the party along many lines, and it had to do also with Sahra Wagenknecht, who was a prominent media figure in the party and polarized the party. And the new leadership, they try to unify, and sometimes this can be a bit boring, trying to pacify. But they have been quite successful with it, and I think this is a big accomplishment. There's this party which, on some questions in Gaza, is maybe one of the main questions, but also Ukraine or other or migration, all these issues. There are different opinions. Also, the question: should we govern or not?
Yeah.
Should we stay in opposition and can have more influence in opposition than to be in power and then to be responsible for some policies which people don't like?
And it's always in power in coalition with the SPD.
Exactly, in Germany. So there are many questions where there are not there's no consensus, but the new leadership, they definitely succeeded in unifying the party as much as possible.
Yeah, and
that's
I think
a big accomplishment.
Exactly. When I moved here, I was quite interested in the Left Party from the get-go, because back then it was actually the third party, so it was the official opposition, which was crazy to me as a Brit, where we have a two-party system. But I picked up very quickly about this huge divide back then between the Sahra Wagenknecht wing and the kind of mainstream wing. Katja Kipping was the leader then. Wagenknecht was the parliamentary leader, the Fraktionsvorsitzende, I think. And so she was a very controversial figure, but also very popular. And she has since then actually split off, right? And was very, very close to entering the Bundestag with her party, the BSV, the Bündnisher Wagenknecht, which was kind of a new political force, a new type of political force in Germany. Why do you think? Firstly, why was it so bitter back then, and why did she split off, and then why did it fail? Because it was so close.
Yes, I mean, it's very interesting. We have to talk about Sahra Wagenknecht. She's from the east of Germany, and she's now in her 50s, but she's been a media figure, and she's been popular also in the media. Talk shows really like to invite her because she was from the Left Party, but in some questions she really differed from the party and criticized her own party very openly. So these people are very popular to be invited into talk shows. To have somebody who criticizes his own party is something which is gets you invited. It makes good TV. So that she was very popular, and she's a media figure, and she's really professional and good in talk shows, and she has her fans. So I understand that that there are big parts in the party, especially in the East, they didn't want to let her go. But there was this conflict about strategy and also what it means to be a left party. And the interesting thing, her strategy is also social populism. She's also advocating, or she's also criticizing high rents, and
high costs.
she's for minimum wage, and she's for more state interference into the economy for more social justice. So that's the core issue of her. But she says, but her strategy was to say, okay, that's our core issue, and then also peace. So we are against involvement in war. So also, like the Left Party, we are against delivering weapons.
Sure. So far, it sounds like they're on the same page.
Regarding this, they were on the same page, but then they differed on like migration, for instance. She said, okay, so many people in Germany are dissatisfied with the migration policy. That's why they vote AfD. So we'll just follow, and we also criticize migration. She put up posters with her own party, said Germany wants less migration. And just in general migration, not just less refugees. No, less migration. Which is,
It's arguable how left-wing that is, right?
Yeah, that's not left-wing. And also the way she disregarded what the Ukrainians have to endure with the war in with the Russian aggression. She just said there should be peace and we should talk to Putin, a little bit like Trump does. You just have to talk to him and then we'll agree on something. And what happens with Ukraine, we don't care. She kind of followed this line of argument. So that is also differing from what the left party says. They still have solidarity with the people in Ukraine, which doesn't mean that to support the state of Ukraine with weapons. That's a different thing. So the left, there are different ways, and many people who voted for the left, they are even for weapons to Ukraine.
I was just about to say,
this also is a topic which divides parts of the left. So, but what Wagenknecht said, she said, we are very clear. We are just we are not going to support Ukraine because that's not our business.
Yeah,
we should look that Germany is a sovereign state nation.
She was kind of Germany first, but from a left-wing perspective.
Exactly,
right?
It's a bit nationalistic discourse, also geopolitical discourse, which she catered to, and especially on migration, but also already in the Corona times, she really there were some big discussions in the party. So more and more she alienated from her party, and so the split was unavoidable. And I mean, without the split, it wouldn't have been possible that the left party would have had this comeback. But because that's what actually everybody I talked to said, that it was only possible this comeback because the split, because you could not reunite these two positions. Very different strategies. And I mean, Sahra Wagenknecht was quite successful with her party, especially in the elections in the East.
Yeah.
While the left really lost that was last year.
In the state elections, you mean?
State elections, exactly. And she was so successful that there was this dilemma that she was needed to form a coalition government if you wanted to avoid the AfD, which still all the parties in Germany want to avoid.
Yeah.
So suddenly, in Brandenburg and in Saxony and in Thuringia, the question was, should we form a coalition government? And in Brandenburg, it was easier because it was a social democratic party. And Sahra Wagenknecht, you can argue, is like a right-wing social democratic party.
Fair.
It's not so far away from each other, so they could form a coalition.
Except on this Russia issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the main split between. But even within the Social Democrats in the East, you have different positions on that. Also, even with Christian Democrats in the East, you have different positions a little bit on that, because in the East, they are not so anti-Russian. Many people are not so anti-Russian. So,
which is probably about their history as part of the DDR, right?
Exactly. Even they may be conservative, but they don't consider Russia as the enemy.
Yeah.
Some even romanticize Russia and see
the friendship between nations.
Exactly.
And stuff.
And they see the United States much more critical than in the West. I mean, there is a very uncritical alliance with the United States in the west of Germany, which is alien to many people in the East.
So you think that there's still this divide along Cold War lines in geopolitics? At
least in the population, yes. And it reflects in, I mean, you can see this also in other countries, but definitely in the East, this is a topic where the division is also one of East and West. And that has to do also, I mean, in the East, the AfD is much more successful. So the idea of Sahra Wagenknecht was to say, okay, why do the people vote for AfD? Because they're more pro-Russian than the mainstream of the parties, because they're more anti-migration than the rest of the parties. So let's just copy that and be just more social than the AfD. I mean, you can argue it's a right-wing populist party with a left-wing social agenda, you could argue, Wagenknecht. So
or the other way around.
Or the other way around, you know, so it's
It was an interesting experiment.
Exactly, but it only worked in the East German state elections. It didn't work on a national level because also then forming a coalition government, I think that really was bad for her image, because she was like a protest figure. And then forming, especially in Thuringia, where they formed a coalition with a conservative party, the CDU. This was one aspect. And the other aspect was it was like a very closed shop, you know?
Yeah.
You couldn't just become a member of this party. You had to ask for it, and they were very reluctant to let people in because they wanted to keep control. So people supported this party, and they were allowed to put up posters for them, and but not allowed to become members.
Really?
So,
I didn't even know that.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
kind
they just had 1,000 members last year, or
Wow.
maybe now it's a bit more. But it has been a big topic. Which, I mean, if I'm a supporter of this party, but they don't let me in because they and all the positions they go to friends and family of Sahra Wagenknecht. It's a bit like, I mean, it works in other places, like in the Netherlands, the Het Wilders party has just one member.
True. Reform is basically just Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef as well.
It can work.
Yeah.
For populist parties, you don't have to be a mass party.
Yeah.
But I mean, the left party, on the other hand, they really became a mass party now. I mean, they doubled their members because there was this hype and many people became members, and it's a very different concept of a party. You can become a member and you can engage yourself, and that's a very different concept of party and what it means to be a left party. The Wagenknecht was a very interesting experiment trying to copy this playbook of populist parties and having a very clear strategy, because that's very important to have a very to speak with one voice, and that's much easier if you don't just have a small group of people speaking for the party. While the left always has the problem, too many voices saying different things. What does this party stand for? That is a big accomplishment. They succeeded in speaking more or less with one voice.
Which was Sarah's voice, right? Because it wasn't just a populist party in the classic mold like the AfD. It was also a personality party.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's very rare in post-war Germany, let's say, right? And a lot of people said it couldn't work. I mean, I always wonder.
But it worked in other places. I mean,
Poland is full of it.
Oh, well, Trump. I mean, it's not the Republican Party; it's the Trump Party now.
True, although he set up a party rather than a new one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But like Czech Republic, no, it's just the Babiš party.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, they're or like Berlusconi and all the populist figures you have. It's very much has to do with personal charisma and followers who really worship you like a god.
Yeah, yeah, she has that.
That's a concept of a populist party.
I don't quite get why. I guess I'm not in her target audience, but I never saw her as she is a very good TV performer, but she's not very personally charismatic, is she? She's just good at like maybe it's this. She has this kind of stern German way of saying that everyone's wrong, basically.
Every country has the populist which fits into the political culture. Trump would be impossible in Germany,
of course,
but he fits in the American political culture.
Yeah,
he's been a TV personality. He's been a poser, and
Nigel Farage is very, very British.
Yeah, he's very British. He wouldn't work in any other place. Yeah. Berlusconi wouldn't work in any other place than in Italy.
True.
So Sahra Wagenknecht is a certain kind of, I would say, German populist, which only works in Germany because it's this kind of Oberlehrer,
right? Like kind of the headmaster or something.
The headmaster, exactly.
Headmistress.
Intellectually, she's quite brilliant.
Yeah, she was a Marxist academic, right?
Yeah, so she's. I mean, she's not an intellectual, I would say, but she's sharp.
Yeah,
and she's very good. In criticizing things. She's not so good, and people like it that she stands with her position, even though it's unpopular, and that's part of her success.
Yeah. I think part of because there's this video of her in the 90s in the DDR, and she was basically one of the few people complaining publicly about the reunification and stuff. Have you seen the one I mean? She's very young. She was quite attractive as well. And I think she's quite an interesting figure because she did her PhD in something that sounded very kind of DDR to me, like Marxist economic production.
Yes, exactly.
But you actually wrote your last book about populism, didn't you?
Exactly. Yes, that's why. I mean, I could have written a book about Sahra Wagenknecht if she would have been more successful. Maybe I would have written a book about Sahra Wagenknecht. But then suddenly the left party came back to life again with her leaving, And I mean, it has to do with how the Green Party and the Social Democratic Party have behaved being in power. So that's part of the success of the Left Party.
Yeah.
I mean, many dissatisfied voters from the Green Party voted this time for the Left Party. Quite a few Social Democrats too. That this is part of the success story of the Left Party. But also, I mean, they had a strategy, and they had the plan, and they had this plan from day one when Sahra Wagenknecht went away with her people to forming her own party. And they have been following this line, and it took some time for it to have the effect they hoped for, but it did work out. So, I mean, and this is like with Mamdani or with Jeremy Corbyn, focus on the social issues. And then, I mean, that's the difference to Sahra Wagenknecht, but on this other more divisive issues like migration or how to react to the climate change, to global warming. Also, they have a clear position, so people know we can rely on them, and they won't make any compromises towards the AfD. I mean, this is very clear. It's an anti-fascist party which will not in any way work together with the AfD. While Sahra Wagenknecht, on the other hand, she's been quite open to also work together with the AfD.
Yeah, I think in a sense her message was a bit too eccentric, right? It was a bit too, we want left wing, but then we don't want migration, and we might work with the AfD. And maybe that was the kind of thing that would get her applause in the East, but it clearly wasn't enough to get her over the line nationally. And you mentioned they spoke with one voice, but they have some pretty eccentric people in the party. I'm not going to
the Left Party. You mean?
No. I mean BSV. Yeah,
okay.
It was kind of like some of the most extreme people from the left, the people who were actually quite pro-Russian or had ties to dictatorships.
Yes.
This kind of idea of the authoritarian left, right?
Yes.
And then these are all these big issues which. Firstly, you're not going to change in the Bundestag as a minority, as a small party, but also you're definitely not going to change in a state election, right?
Yeah.
So I remember she said, like, we'll only go into government if we can, reopen Nord Stream, or it was something like that, or but of course, no one's going to do that.
No, in this state election in Thuringia, Brandenburg, and Saxony, they put up posters just with her face.
Yeah.
Even though she wasn't
she wasn't actually a candidate in the state elections, right?
But she was the only person everybody knew, so that's why it was all built on her charisma. And those people who left the Left Party to form the now Bündnis Sahra Wagenknecht, they're gonna rename themselves. They're changing the name now to be less focused on the person. But they had this idea to have a strict opposition to some things which are in Germany mainstream, like this pro-Western and anti-Russian mainstream. They really kind of try to differ from that, and but mainly on a symbolic level. I mean, then the main question in this state, when they talked about forming a coalition, the main question was criticizing this whole German support for Ukraine.
Right, yeah, which is not a state issue.
Which is not a state issue. So it was really on a symbolic level. And apart from that, I mean, they were some social issues were important for them, and
migration,
but also migration, and also law and order, conservative issues. I mean, so it's not really a left party. It's a mix of left and right. And on the other hand, the Left Party, they succeeded in being a left party and not abandoning these issues which seemed controversial, but which are important, because I mean, people want opposition party to differ from the rest of the parties. So,
which is something I think the Greens haven't picked up, right? But I think, with Wagenknecht, she was actually very toxic for the left party, because there were a lot of people who were like, listen, I like the left party, but I hate Wagenknecht because she's so anti-migrant. Because,
Exactly.
of course, migration is a controversial issue. It's quite unpopular at the moment. But there are always going to be a solid, 20, 30% of people who are pro-migration, and they need to go somewhere, right? And
Exactly.
if all of the parties are singing from the same hymn sheet, then actually you can stand out. And this is, what I would maybe say about the left party on Palestine as well. It's
Exactly.
actually
They
good.
fill the void. They fill the void. Yeah.
And you should, and
they didn't do it actively so much. They didn't say, "Oh, we have this very different migration policy,"
they kind of avoided the controversial topics.
They tried to avoid the controversial topics, but they couldn't completely. But when they were asked about it, they had one line. There was no cacophony like in the past.
True.
So that was really part of their success. People knew, okay, this is a left party which has some position on migration, on Palestine, which is okay, and that's why I can vote for, without going too much into the details.
Yeah. So for your book, what kind of figures did you speak to? Did you speak to people from the left, from BSV as well, or from?
I spoke especially to all the people who succeeded with a direct. In Germany, you have, in the districts, you can have a direct mandate.
Yeah.
So there were 6-7 people who succeeded in winning a direct mandate, and I talked to quite a few of the new members of parliament. I mean, it's almost a new party now. So many new members, so many new people who are completely new in the Bundestag.
Quite a lot of young people, right?
There's quite a lot of young people. It's the youngest fraction in the Bundestag. Also very many young women.
Yeah.
So I talked to many people who make up the diversity of this party now. It's one of the most diverse parties one of the most interesting parties in the parliament now, I would say, and it represents a shift in the electorate. I mean, it's very interesting. You have this polarization, and you can really say young women in cities voted mainly left party. Old men living in the countryside mostly voted AfD or CDU.
Yeah.
So you have this polarization. This division is very clearly to see. Now, Germany, unfortunately, is an aging country, so the old men living in the countryside have, unfortunately, more influence than the young women living in the cities. But you have this polarization, and I mean, I can imagine, I can understand why young women in the cities vote for the left party, because they are strong on these issues, and they had some figureheads like Heidi Reicheneck.
Yeah, I was about to mention her.
A speech in the Bundestag against the AfD. That was really like a catalyst. How do you say?
Catalyst.
Catalyst for the left party when the now Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who was then still in opposition, he had he made a move to have the Bundestag vote on a migration issue, and accepted that also AfD would vote for it.
Yeah, which was very controversial.
Which was very controversial, and even within his own party, it was controversial. But the only party who really stood up and said, that's a taboo, that's really a red line being crossed, that was Heidi Reicheneck, who had her 5 minutes of fame in the Bundestag.
It was a great speech. I mean, it got millions of views on TikTok.
Exactly.
Everywhere.
It went viral. And I mean, one has to say, she has been, Heidi Reicheneck, she has been active on TikTok and social media before. So she's already especially being known to young people on TikTok. And with this speech, she became nationwide a celebrity, I would say. Now she's everybody knows her.
Yeah.
And
she's actually probably more prominent than Ines Schwertner, for example.
Yeah, she's really, especially with young people, and that's a big success has to do with her. I mean, that's the left party, because they knew they were nearly dead. I mean, and they knew they would not be invited to talk shows like Sahra Wagenknecht used to be in the past. They had to fear that the big media, mainstream media, would just ignore them. So what did they do? They said, okay, let's put all our energy, or much of our energy, into social media. and that was that
it was successful.
that worked out, and so what they really accomplished also is and on social media also the AfD, out of the same reasons, because they also said, okay, mainstream media will ignore us or will try to avoid us. That's why we have to invest in social media. They were very successful on social media. If you were on TikTok or X, you could see the AfD was very present.
Yeah.
Or on Facebook.
Yeah.
And the left party really kind of succeeded in to break that.
Yeah, which is something that the other parties have really failed to do, you know? Like, I think actually the Greens, I think this is quite emblematic of the Greens. If I remember rightly, they left TikTok because of data protection concerns and stuff like that. And this is such a huge platform. And they were like, oh, well, it's Chinese and all. And I'm like, you're really leaving the battlefield to the far right here.
Yes, exactly. And because TikTok is for the kids, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so...
And the youth, actually, young men in Germany, I think actually with the youth vote from 18 to 25, it's the last poll I saw was Left Party 24 or so and AfD 25. So actually with the youth, the AfD, and it's of course on gender lines, right? It's women for the left and men for the AfD. Of course, there's the city, countryside divide as well. But a lot of the stuff you're describing is almost just like this polarization or division. It's actually just Germany coming a little bit late, as usual, to where things were, right? Because
you could say so, yes.
You know, even when I left the UK, which is like 8 years ago now, we already knew that on the left side, they already knew that social media was the way because you can get your message out.
Yes.
Reform have done that now, the far right party. And you're not dealing with such a hostile environment of the mainstream media, which is very hostile to left-wing ideas.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned, you know, they're not getting invited to they wouldn't get invited.
Now they are.
Now they are because they did quite well, right?
Yeah. But before they didn't. They weren't, exactly.
Yeah. And I guess that was one issue with Germany. So many different parties. In the last Bundestag, I think by the end, what was it, 7 or 8? Because you had the FDP, you had the BSV, which was a group, Linke, and then it's actually just got a lot smaller and more.
Yeah.
But do you see any risk in Die Linke's strategy?
Well, I mean, you cannot, of course, all the conflicts solve by try to pacify them. There are some issues, and what they can learn from Wagenknecht is just to stand firm when being attacked and not to give in. I mean, you can see it with Mamdani. He's been attacked ruthlessly, being anti-Semitic. And it doesn't matter.
He brushes it off because he knows he's not anti-Semitic.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. I mean, you have to, you have to know your talking points. But I mean, he has been supporting of BDS. I think.
Yeah.
He used to support boycott of Israel.
Yeah.
This is.
I think he still does. Yeah.
And at least he used to, and it was not a main issue in New York, apart from his opponents, of course, who kind of tried to paint him as a Hamas supporter and whatever. But I mean, what the left can learn from him, or also from Wagenknecht, is not to give in and not to try to please the mainstream or the right-wing media, because whatever you do, it won't be enough for them. So to be firm on that and to stand. Yeah,
there was one incident along these lines which I thought was disappointing and quite telling. There was someone in the Linke Partei, like Vorstand, the group, the kind of board chairman, who posted a map of historic Palestine, right? I think her name was Ulrike Eichler. Eichler, that's it, yeah. And she got a very, angry or kind of worried phone call from one of the Linke leaders saying, listen, we've got Bild Zeitung, the German most popular, very pro-Israel newspaper, calling, you need to delete that and all of this, even though on the other hand, we had the president of the Bundestag posting maps of Israel, which show not just Israel and Gaza and the West Bank with the Israeli flag, but also the Golan Heights, which is illegally occupied, annexed by Israel from Syria. So there's a crazy double standard. And I wonder, and I would like to speak to some Linke politicians on this podcast in the future. So if they're listening, please come on. But why is it that they have, they're afraid of Bild Zeitung?
Yes.
Because it's really being hated by Bild Zeitung. As someone who's, I do get a bit of pushback from right-wing media myself. I don't think it's bad for my brand. I'm not worried about it, right?
That's what I mean. I mean, you have to pick your enemies too, and it doesn't make any sense to try to please them. But in Germany, yes, many politicians are afraid of Bild Zeitung. And I mean, you know from the British experience, Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, it kind of was part of his
sure, the Israel thing was
killed him.
It
was these accusations of anti-Semitism.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe not the only reason, maybe not the main reason, but
it was one of the. It was definitely one of the worst.
Yeah, exactly. So especially in Germany, where the whole discourse is very moralistic about how do you stand with Israel or not, and of course there is a double standard. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But so people get nervous, and I think it's not only the Bild Zeitung; it's also because part of her own party, they are very nervous about it too.
I'd be interested in hearing more about that. You mean the kind of pro-Israel wing, sometimes called the anti-Deutsch?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are definitely maybe positions in the left party which the leadership wouldn't agree on. So I mean, there are maybe people in the party who would also call for BDS, and then the leadership would say, we don't endorse that. I mean, there's been a big discussion within the party. Should we call it a genocide or not? Because in Germany, it's not common to call what happened happens in Gaza a genocide. But, so parts of the left party, they said it's a genocide. Parts of the leadership, Ines Schwertner, did say yes. Jan van Aken did not want to
call it a genocide, right?
Well, I mean, you can argue it's not so important to talk about word action. Actions are more important. But still, of course, I mean, to be head of a party with such a diverse range of opinions, then you have to try to kind of find a middle ground.
And they saw themselves as the peacemakers, right?
Well, they have to. I mean, if any party leader has to try to find the middle ground,
I would just kick out the pro-Israel wing, being honest. But
well, I think
that's why I'm not a political leader.
I think you can't do that in Germany.
Yeah, that's true. There is some strange rules about you can't. It's hard to kick people out, actually.
But what I find interesting is that also in the left party they're more critical about people who are not on the party line. I mean, there is a party line. There has to be a party line, and you can say, okay, if someone posts a map of Palestine and kind of this is not the party line.
If it's the whole historic Palestine, including Israel,
let's not get too much into detail. It's a really boring discussion.
Yeah, it is. So much of these discussions are actually very tedious.
Exactly. But I mean, you can argue this is not the party line, and then you say, okay, people are can have their own opinion. It's not the party line. Our party line is this, and this. So, but there are people who are on the pro-Israeli side. They also don't adhere to the party line. They don't follow. They post statements which don't follow the party line, and
they talk to Springer to attack the
party.
They
talk exactly. So this is something which shouldn't happen, and where you also have to look after that people don't. I mean, that has been the reason why the left a long time ago was not popular to be among many people, because they were not speaking with one voice. It was not clear what they stand for, and that's also very interesting. One of the main reasons why people didn't vote the left was because of foreign policy reasons. So people said, okay, yes, it's a left party, and
we want lower rent. Sure.
Who doesn't want a lower rent? But their positions on Ukraine or on Israel, Palestine, were a reason people said, and it was not. This doesn't matter which position, but it was also because they were not speaking with one voice. Many people felt like, okay, this is not a party I can vote for. Interestingly, I mean, because foreign policy usually is not a topic which is decisive. If I vote a party, I can vote a party out of very many reasons, and foreign policy usually is not one of the most
Yeah, it's really
reasons.
interesting actually, because I think this is an issue that the left has internationally, right? Not just in Germany. Often it does pursue a different perspective on foreign policy, whether that would be opposing weapons to Ukraine or standing more with Palestine. And it's quite often what the media attacks the left
Exactly,
for, right?
yes.
Because it's quite hard to argue, I suppose, about
Lower rents.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's like it's not they don't feel so confident on it. The right side or the media, mainstream media, but you know, so being soft on Putin or being
exactly.
anti-Semitic
Yeah.
in the context of Israel
Exactly.
is something which they feel weak on. So I do wonder about that. Of course, in the past there were some figures who were, you know, most of them left for the BSV, but we're talking about Dieter Diem, or who was the vice of BSV?
And Sevim Dardelen.
Yeah, Sevim Dardelen, interesting character, quite radical foreign policy positions,
Yes.
right?
Completely anti-NATO.
Yes, and that's an issue which I guess would resonate more in the east of Germany, but the east is only like a quarter of the voters actually. So, but one thing I wanted to actually note about the BSV and about Sahra Wagenknecht herself, this was an anti-migrant populist party, right? But it was actually by far the most diverse party in German politics. I mean, Sahra Wagenknecht herself, not everyone knows this, but she's half Iranian.
Her father was Iranian. She didn't meet him. I think when she was 3 or 5 years old, he went back to Iran and was never heard of since. So she never really met him. But yeah, of course, and in the party there are quite a few people who have immigrant background.
Yeah, Sevim Dardelen's
exactly,
Turkish,
and also they put them in the forefront, I would say, to show we're not a racist party, even though you could argue that. But it also shows, I mean, migrant voters and migrants in Germany are not a homogeneous group. There are some people who think there should be less migration in Germany, and this is the typical effect. You know, we sit in a department of a train, and there are two people sitting, or you're sitting there alone. Second person comes in. Okay, you don't want to share the room with the second person. Then a third person comes in. The person who comes in next is always looked at with suspicion because this is like some migrants feel also, okay, there are enough migrants now here.
Yeah.
I'm here and that's okay. And this animosities between groups, between East Germans and immigrants, between first generation immigrants and from immigrants from one country against immigrants from the other country, you have this kind of animosities, and not every migrant is for open borders. Definitely not.
Yeah.
So, and Wagenknecht always argued to have a strong social system. You can't have too much migration, and you can argue about that. So
I mean, Bernie Sanders back in 2016 said open borders was a Koch brothers, he would have called it, like idea, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't think anyone's actually pushing for open borders.
No, of course, that's a cliche.
Yeah. And I think that the left party, they have kind of stood up for the dignity of migrants a little bit more.
That's true. I mean, there are probably still some people in the left party who are for open borders, but this is not something they actively propagate. There's people who are against NATO, but this is not like something which is so important to be discussed. And yes,
and this is a big issue in the UK left at the moment, which has just been, we've got Zach Polanski, who I would say more than Jeremy Corbyn is our Zoran Mamdani. Also just in terms of the style, he's admitted he's a bit goofier than Zoran. He said, Zoran's cooler than me, but, and I think the Green, it's kind of parallels in a way what's happening with the new Jeremy Corbyn party, which doesn't have a name, but it's called Your Party for the moment.
Yeah.
And Zara Sultana has said, our thing is, why are we different from the Greens? We want to leave NATO.
Yeah.
We don't want diplomatic relations with Israel.
Yeah.
And I think, personally, I don't think that's what people are voting on.
Yes,
and the Greens could be, the British Greens could be the next big success of the left. I've seen polls where they're actually ahead of the Labour Party, who are in government with a majority, and the Labour Party are actually in fourth place, following this kind of Olaf Scholz type course. Keir Starmer, for me, is the Olaf Scholz of the UK, right? So I think there's something to be said for that. But I wonder, is the road going to run out, or is there going to be some kind of change in circumstances? And also, when it comes to polling of left party supporters, for example, the party is the population and the voters are more moderate on some issues, like Ukraine. Actually, most voters want to send weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah. According to some polls.
Which is what I've seen. And, they're very clearly against Israel and are calling it a genocide, right? So I wonder, and more widely in Germany, the population is actually not very different from the rest of Europe when it comes to this Israel-Palestine conflict. But it's just when it gets to the media, when it gets to the political element, the political class, you could say, that the room for discussion is much smaller. I wonder why you think that is, and who you think are the kind of key players in this, or is it the media? Is it like
I think the media
lobbying?
I think the media plays a big role. I think we have a media crisis, and we have social media being very much also, a place where open for disinformation, for campaigns against people or against issues.
Including against you by the Israeli embassy, right?
Yeah, well, it's X. Especially since Elon Musk took place, is really become a help of a place. And so media is kind of trying to stick to a middle ground, and the room for discussion on certain issues, I would say, has become
restricted,
and that many people feel like that out of different reasons. And so this is something where populist parties like Wagenknecht also can count on that, on this dissatisfaction, and they say things which are not the mainstream, and this is part of their success. Also, the AfD, of course, kind of tries to portray herself as a party where you can say things which are not allowed in other places. So there is the discourse is really tricky. But talking about migration, you talked about the UK. There was also something which was divisive for Jeremy Corbyn when he campaigned, also focusing on social issues for the time of Brexit.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a clear position on that.
Yeah, Brexit was actually what
because
killed it
part
more
of
than
his voters,
Israel,
exactly. Part of his voters were for Brexit, others were against it, and he didn't have a clear position on that. So the Left Party very much, as you said, they didn't have concrete issues they were promoting. Not open borders, definitely not, but just by denouncing the racism of this whole discourse in Germany, that was part of their success. The Jan van Aken saying, okay, we need migration, and migrants, we have to treat them with dignity and
he went against the flow there, right?
Exactly, he went against the flow, and that was really also an important part of the success of the Left Party.
Yeah. I do think it's an exciting time for the Left Party. I wonder if they are thinking whether they could get into government next time. In general, that's maybe looking unlikely with the polls at the moment. But I think what is quite possible is that they could be the primary left-wing force in the Berlin state election, which is next year.
Yes.
If they have a good campaign. I have seen a little bit from their candidate, but I haven't seen that much. They've had a few videos, but it's just starting now, right? But
Mamdani at 1 year ago, 1% had.
Wow.
So he really also succeeded in becoming a well-known figure just within 1 year. So
true.
1 year is a long time, and but also interesting is the Left Party succeeded to become which was successful also in the West as much as in the East. That was new, and in the cities, student cities especially. So in the East and in the West, and of course you have this division that in the cities the left is successful. So we could have a mayor from the left in 1 year in Berlin. already in the federal elections, it was a most successful party, and
Yeah.
now they have a candidate, and now it's 1 year to go. So
and it's their first candidate from a migrant background as
it's
well.
the first candidate with a migrant background, so that plays a role, even though it's not a person who really has been very much. She will focus on other issues. She too will focus on social issues, but of course it will play a role, and they have a chance that we have a mayor from the left party for the first time in Berlin. They have been in coalition governments before, so but this could be the first time that the mayor could be from the left party.
Yeah.
So, but it's a very different thing in state elections, like in Sachsen-Anhalt, Saxonia.
Saxony-Anhalt, I think it's called.
Saxony-Anhalt.
Which is quite a boring name. But.
Yeah, or like in federal elections in other places. In the West, they could, and I think they will succeed to come into parliament, which they haven't succeeded so much before, like in Baden-Württemberg or other states. And in the East, the situation is very different. The AfD is very strong in the East. So, like in Saxony-Anhalt, it could be the question, if it's not possible to form a government without the AfD, how will the left
react to that?
And we can see already in Saxony and in Thuringia, they help even a conservative government just to avoid the AfD having any influence on power. So, but it's a
tricky balance.
It's a tricky balance. On the one hand, to be a protest party, which kind of also is clear on opposition to the mainstream. On the other hand, there is this dilemma: do we support even a conservative party just to avoid the AfD having a grab on power? So it's a really tricky situation because they have to maneuver in this dilemma.
Yeah, exactly, and quite a right-wing conservative party under Merz as well, right?
Exactly.
So they're going to have to swallow some frogs, I believe you say in German, right?
And the conservative party under Merz, they say like we try to keep both at distance, the left party and the AfD. But it's not possible because without these two parties, there is no majority anymore in some states, and
especially Sachsen-Anhalt,
exactly.
Right? Because the polls are saying actually that they might have enough. The AfD might have enough for a full majority on their own.
Yes,
assuming a couple of parties don't get to the 5% hurdle, then that rejigs the equation of the parliamentary share. So what do you think? Do you think Germany, do you predict, as someone who's written about populism, moving away from the left just for the end, I'm wondering, do you think we will see an AfD state government soon? And do you think we will see the AfD in national government in maybe 10 years?
I hope not, but I could imagine. In Saxony-Anhalt, which is one of those East German states, if the AfD on their own doesn't have a majority, but like 40%, then the question is there another party who would be willing to form a coalition with them, with independent or even an AfD candidate as prime minister of the state? And I only see two possible parties: the CDU, who still tries to avoid this thought, or the BSW, Sahra Wagenknecht. So it's not impossible to think of an AfD-BSW government in Saxony-Anhalt next year, because there would be also a chance for the Sahra Wagenknecht party to show that they're different than all these other parties who try to kind of draw a red line. Sahra Wagenknecht very openly says we do have some things in common, and on other things we differ. And but she thinks it's wrong to keep this kind of cordon sanitaire, as they say in
or the firewall.
The firewall, as we say in Germany, she said is wrong. We should accept the AfD as a party like any other party. That's very different to what the left party says, who says, well, in any case, that's the last thing. We are an anti-fascist party, and now you can argue what anti-fascism means, but in this case, it would mean we rather support a conservative government than to work together with the AfD. And that's a very different approach to Sahra Wagenknecht. So I can imagine in Saxony-Anhalt to have such a situation where suddenly this is an option. So,
and that's going to send shockwaves around the world, I think, if it does.
Well, I mean, there have been, that's why I think of it, because there have been other examples, like in Italy, when the Cinque Stelle, a kind of left-wing populist party, but also not so left-wing on migration, for instance, but very left populist on social issues.
Yeah.
When they were so strong that they could form a government, they made a coalition with Matteo Salvini from the right-wing party.
Yeah, Lega Nord or Lega Italia,
which is a right-wing extremist party. So there are.
It's happened before.
It happened before, also in Greece, Syriza with a right-wing populist party. So it's not so absurd to think of it, and it wouldn't be the first time.
And some people actually say what we need is the AfD in government to get rid of their magic.
Exactly.
What do you think of that?
I don't think this has ever worked, really. I mean, look at Italy.
I mean, look at Germany.
Look at Italy.
Oh,
yeah,
true.
look at Germany. But just have to look at Italy.
Yeah.
Of course. So especially in Germany, we shouldn't do that.
That's what they said about the Nazis, right? It was
exactly.
like Von Papen was like, oh, come on, give them a go and then it'll be fine. The hype will be over.
Exactly. Yeah, it didn't work out. So especially in Germany, I think with this historical experience, many people are reluctant to try this experiment another time, even though you can't compare AfD completely to the NSDAP. I would say there are some differences in different times, but still,
sure.
I wouldn't like Sahra Wagenknecht say it's a party like any other party. Definitely not, and it hasn't worked out in any other place I know. So no, and the question is, how does the left party? What's the strategy of the left party? And I think what they do quite good is to say we have to get voters from the AfD back. I mean, that's the same as Wagenknecht also says. We have to get voters from the AfD back, but Wagenknecht says we kind of cater to their racism, and the left party says no. But we say, and like Mamdani said, these people, they are dissatisfied, and we have the better answers than the AfD. But we are not kind of judging morally that they are racist or so. But we have to give them a better
option.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
Got a choice. Daniel Bax, thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Thank you.